Assalamu alaikum guys and welcome to another exciting episode of Youth on the Rise। उम्मीद है आप सब लोग खैरियत से होंगे। मैं हूं आपका होस्ट उमर चौधरी और आज हम लोग बात करने वाले हैं पाकिस्तान के अंदर वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट के हवाले से। तो गाइस पाकिस्तान की 50% पॉपुलेशन जो है वो ख़वातीन की है। यानी अगर हम इकोनॉमिकल व्हीकल की बात करें तो अगर दो पहिए मर्द हैं तो दो पहिए ख़वातीन हैं। लेकिन अगर हम लोग वर्क प्रोपोर्शन के हिसाब से बात करें सो मर्द हजरात की प्रोपोर्शन जो परसेंटेज है काम करने की वो ज़्यादा है और ख़वातीन की बहुत कम है। यानी कि अगर हम अपनी इकोनॉमिकल व्हीकल को देखें तो दो पहिए ज़्यादा अच्छा परफॉर्म कर रहे हैं, दो पहिए नहीं कर पा रहे, जिसकी वजह से अल्टीमेटली हमारी इकोनॉमिकल व्हीकल उस तरीके से आगे नहीं बढ़ पा रही जिस जिस तरीके से उसको बढ़ना चाहिए। अब उसकी क्या वजूहत हैं, कौन कौन से सोशल नॉर्म्स हैं, कौन कौन से ऐसे बैरियर्स हैं इकोनॉमिक, कौन कौन से ऐसे कल्चरल बैरियर्स हैं जिसकी वजह से ये चीज़ उस तरह से हो नहीं पा रही जो कि आइडियल है। तो इन सब चीज़ों के ऊपर बात करने के लिए हम लोगों ने अपने एक सीनियर गेस्ट को दावत दी है ऑल द वे फ्रॉम यूके। ही इज़ वेरी कीन ऑन एम्पावरिंग वुमेन in Pakistan and bringing more and more women into workplace. So he is a former chief analytics and research officer at Lloyd's UK. Currently, he's a CEO of Rockborn UK. So please welcome Waseem Ali. Assalamu alaikum, Waseem. How are you?
Welcome, Salam. Thank you, Omar. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to the conversation. I'm in envy of your Urdu as well, so I look forward to having this conversation.
That's all right. You know, it's my mother tongue, so it's natural. And I'm envy of your British accent.
Okay. We can teach each other. We can teach each other, mate.
Yes. You know, it's gonna be a good barter trade. So, so Waseem, first of all, thank you very much for taking out the time out of your busy schedule. And moving forward, I want to have a bit of introduction for my audience. So can you start by sharing a bit about your background and what inspired you to focus on empowering women in Pakistan? Yeah.
Of course. Look, thank you so much for having me on the show, Omar. We've been talking for a few months now. I love what you're trying to do and your business that you're setting up and growing multiple businesses, I should say. So really excited to have this conversation with you. I don't actually do podcasts a huge amount or shows like this a huge amount. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. So a little intro on me. Got the best way to describe me, I'm a data person, and I have been for many a year, over 15 years now. If I kind of roll back to kind of my education altogether, the only thing that I was ever good at in school was mathematics. That was the only thing I was ever good at, and is the only thing that I kind of knew how to do. I wasn't very good at anything else. So that was a big part of me growing up, and that kind of naturally led me into data, if that makes sense. So I started my career in data. There's a few different avenues, as you well know. So I started in data quality in the NHS here in the UK, moving on to consulting. So I was a data consultant for a while. That's where I learned my craft in coding and how to manage stakeholders and all of those kind of elements. I then moved on to a company, a healthcare company, a private healthcare company here in the UK, where is kind of where my career took off in terms of progression. So I went from being effectively a junior coder to being head of the department within a few years. And that's kind of where I learned my craft in upward management, how to present to stakeholders, how to win business cases, all of those kind of elements. Had a team of about 20 people there doing some pretty cool stuff. I set up my own consulting company for a while. I remember talking to you about it as well. So I set up my own consulting company, which focused on data strategy for organizations, consulting and training services. Ran that for a few years and was lucky enough to sell it, got a good opportunity to sell the company, so sold it. And then joined Lloyd's of London and was their chief data officer, as you said in the intro there. So it was really good to be part of that organisation, and some really, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but some really good lessons learned throughout that. I guess my motivation, kind of what's my motivation? I'm a big fan of diversity in data. Kind of outside of Pakistan, if you look at the UK and even the US, diversity in tech and data is something that's always been lacking for many a reason, and it still is today. Arguably, I think everyone's talking about it, but if you look at the latest statistics, it's still not quite there. Even if you just look at the gender divide, it's clearly more males in this kind of industry than there are females. But then there's lots of other elements to diversity that I'm really passionate about. Here in the UK, it's things like ethnic minority,
Right.
and it's individuals with disabilities, perhaps, or people from different backgrounds. It's something that I really focus on and have been passionate about a huge for many a year. So at Lloyd's, I drove huge change around bringing more return to work parents into work, as an example. And that happened to be mums, but
Yeah.
it could have been dads as well at the same time. But that was a big drive for me, something I was really proud of. I was probably one of the few of ethnic minority that got to a very senior level at Lloyd's as well. So that was a really good kind of. It gave me the platform and the opportunity to bring more into that. And that's what I try and do at Rockborn as well. So our mission here at Rockborn is to bring more diverse talent into the data industry, and I try to do it from that kind of angle as well. I can definitely bring the Pakistan angle into it as well, but hopefully that's a good intro for you in terms of me and my
Exactly.
background.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the detailed answer. So, Waseem, talking of current challenges, which is the main topic of this podcast episode as well. So, what do you see as the main barriers preventing more women in Pakistan from joining the workforce?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and I'd love your opinion on this as well as we
Sure.
go through. So do jump in if I say something factually incorrect. But I should start. Look, I am Pakistani, and my parents were born and raised in Pakistan. So I've got a bias, and I feel like if I can do anything to support some sort of positive change in this space, I'd love to do it. And I know we've spoken about this previously as well. So look, I think there's a few challenges, I think, and I think some of it we might come into. But I've been doing a lot of reading on this particular topic as well, and for me, sometimes it just comes down to as simple as like the spouse or the stigma of the spouse being the
Yeah.
main breadwinner, and the bias culturally around that. So if you're talking about a relationship of male and female, there's a cultural stigma or a bias that the male will be the main breadwinner in the kind of house, and in the household, and the female will be the homemaker, as we call it. And by the way, that's probably worldwide, right? I would imagine. I've got no statistics to back it up, but I imagine it's not only a Pakistan problem, but I imagine it's heightened in a developing country like Pakistan. And I think that's probably the main thing that we talk about. So as an example, with myself and my wife, we always said when we had kids, I've got a little boy, but our main thing was, whoever at that point is perhaps more secure in a role or financially earning more, that would be the person that goes back to work, and the other person would stay at home for a bit. And I'm not sure if those conversations happen in Pakistan. I'd love your there's a few other points, but I'd love your view on
Yeah,
that, Omar. What do you
Pakistan
think?
is male dominant, and that's what I believe. Yeah, males are the breadwinners, and that's part of our religious values as well. That's one of the aspects, one of the way of seeing it, and also, in big cities, you will always see women and both husband wife working, and even before getting married, girls are working out for education. Like in big cities of Pakistan, you will see in Islamabad, Lahore, Karachi. Uh, I've seen the trend changing when I was growing up. So the women are actually, really getting into work. Parents are encouraging them. Then the new generation is basically uh, getting into this side, but still, because like I said, 50% population, in the big cities, it's not even half of the population of the total country. So the rural areas, how to
Yeah,
deal with that, how to educate not just the rural areas, but I'm also talking about the smaller cities in Punjab, central Punjab. So yeah, we don't see that culture
yeah.
developing anytime sooner. So that's what I see. Yeah.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because actually, there's so many facets to it, and I think the conversation's wider in terms of women in data and stuff. But if you take a country who's culturally as you say, in terms of kind of perhaps male dominated in terms of going into the workplace, and then you take that into an industry vertical like data digital technology, which is globally like that, then the situation magnifies even more. It's interesting because I was reading a quote from the founder of Pakistan, so Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and he spoke about. I'm going to misquote him because I'm doing it off memory here, so apologies to anyone. I don't mean to offend, but he spoke about education as the country's future and the investment in educational establishments. So I think he spoke about universities and schools and all of that kind of stuff, and how that was critical to the success of the country going forwards. And I think a big part of actually one of the big challenges, if you come back to your main, or barriers coming back to your main question, in those areas that perhaps not the main cities, is getting people into education. And actually, like, I was shocked to read a stat which was, what, 22 million kind of females are not in school between the age of 5 and 16. Like, there's a huge proportion there which should be in school but aren't. So I think it starts from education, and I don't know about kind of how that's mandated across the country and stuff like that. So I think you'll know more on that.
So, other than the main challenge that we're talking about, if we go down deeper into the root causes of this, so the main issue that I believe is the cultural perspectives of the people of Pakistan. So, what do you think? The cultural norms and societal expectations, how do they impact women's participation in the workplace? And let's talk about it in generally all around the world, and then we can talk about how this is happening in Pakistan.
Yeah, I mean, look, it starts from globally, and the same thing will impact in Pakistan as well. I'm sure. Is how do you create kind of workplaces that allow for more diversity into that particular company or business or whatever it may be. So, and for me, I always start at what's the value that I'm trying to gain, right? So what's the value that I'm trying to gain in the business? And for me, I played a lot of tennis as a kid, so I took a lot of sports analogies in my career. And for me, when you think about sports teams and you think about how sports teams are formed, I'm not going to talk about the cricket after the World Cup recently and stuff like that, so I won't get into that conversation. But if you talk about formations of teams, people are from different backgrounds, different upbringings, and they all come together to form a unit which is successful in the form of a sports team. Now, if you take that into a business context, as a business leader, one needs to see the value of bringing the diversity of a different group of individuals into the business and the value it brings around the table, right? So as a leader, and I know you're like this as well, as a leader, I want to be challenged, right? I want my senior team to say, Waseem, no, this isn't the idea.
Yeah.
I want you to think about it this way, right? That's not me shying away from my accountability. I'm accountable for the business, absolutely. But I need people who are smarter than me, challenging me. And the way I can get that is by bringing more diversity around the table. Right, so that's a really it sounds really simple, but that's the root cause of it, right? So for me, actually, if you believe in that value up front, you should put levers and mechanisms in place to allow more females, in our case, which is our conversation, into the workplace. So it can be things like the cultural norm aspect is absolutely a thing that we should talk about and go into the detail of. But outside of cultural norm, I think it's a conversation around what would encourage more females to come into the workplace, right? And for me and my experience, and tell me if it would translate to Pakistan as well, is kind of address the pay inequality. So males getting paid more than females, as an example. If the skill set is the same, you should get paid the same, right? Like that, it seems simple. And this applies to all males and females. The work-life balance aspect. If you have a family, how do you ensure there's flexibility built into your workplace to allow you to, for example, pick up kids from school, do the school run, whatever it may be? How do you allow for that? Or even doing less days. So you don't want to work 5 days a week. Okay, how about 3 days?
Yeah.
And that applies to both males and females. and then kind of coming up with the stereotypes around kind of childcare and all of those kind of elements, because over here childcare is very expensive, I'm sure it is in Pakistan as well. So how do you balance out the need to work over childcare and the need of getting childcare and those kind of elements? So I think that really magnifies the whole situation. Just one more thing, if I may say that, I'd love your view on this, because actually I was reading an article by Sharon Peake, it was, right? So a voice on LinkedIn, and she was talking about it from a global perspective, and she's like, the reason females are kind of holding themselves back from being promoted or excelling in their career is a lack of role models, a lack of network, and their past experience and biases in the workplace, right? So I think if we can tackle all those things together, surely that will encourage more diverse talent to come into the business in any form.
I've seen families, especially the rural areas families. So a man having, let's say, 4 daughters and 1 boy, one son. So he's going to send only the son to the school, while the daughters are going to, take care of the house. And once I got a chance to ask, why are you doing this? He said, what do they have to do, after studying? They have to get married. And then after getting married, they'll do the same thing that they do here at our home, cleaning the house, washing dishes. So that's how bad it is. A lot of, non-profit organizations, NGOs are working in the development sector, focused on, women empowerment. But obviously the volume is huge, 50% population. So it's about, how much it is, 270 million. So is the recent result of the population. So 50% of that is a huge number. And so in your view, what does, like you said, education, plays an important role. And can you comment a bit on what kind of improvements we can do in this area? Let's take an example how UK has done it. I mean, long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, I get it, right. And the general comment I'll make is kind of there's no judgment, right? Because actually, as you said, a long time ago, the UK was probably in the same position, right? So I don't believe humans should judge, really. I think we should just try and improve ourselves. So like my in that particular scenario, my challenge as a father myself, my challenge to the father would be, why do you think that? Like why does the female, your daughter's position, just finish at they'll get married and wash dishes? Of course, culturally they should get married if they want to, of course, and all of those kind of things, right? So I'm not getting into that conversation, but actually there's no reason they shouldn't go to a certain level of education and work at a certain level. You don't know what other value they can add to it. It's funny, I was talking to someone about washing dishes the other day. Just buy a dishwasher. Like it's like you don't necessarily need to think about that as a task, or do it together. Like even better, right? Like if you finish off after the day, like actually what a great way to eat dinner together, you wash dishes together, you sit down, you watch telly, whatever you choose to do, but the kids to bed. What a better way to do it. So I'd respectfully challenge the father on that view. So what are the things that can be done outside of kind of education for the girls? I mean, is actually literacy. I mean, about this in data. We talk about data literacy, right? We probably need to form some form of literacy to those that are perhaps living in rural areas, that are perhaps more traditionally or culturally bound is probably the wrong word, but it's ingrained in them. Education on the value of it again. How do we do that? Role models play a big part in it. So actually, the individual that you were talking to, do they have a friend whose daughter's massively progressed to becoming a big chief data officer, as an example? Let's spotlight that individual and let's really celebrate that individual's achievements and so on. Here's a left-wing thing. I think sports play a big part in it as well. I think getting females into sports teams, it shouldn't only be men, really championing them, I think makes a big part. That's a global thing, by the way. Like, but really, really championing them. Like recently it was the like a couple of years ago, it was the female football World Cup, and recently it was the men one, as you know. I actually watched the
Uh-huh.
female one a lot more and enjoyed it a lot more than
Okay.
the male World Cup, only because I kind of enjoyed the football, I enjoyed the competitive spirit, and I enjoyed how they were playing. Obviously, England were playing. England did really well in it, and so on. But I think sports plays a
Yeah,
really big part in that as
beautifully
well.
said. These are such very good ideas. We just have to copy and paste these ideas in Pakistan. But again, we need some government initiatives and policies in place to be able to implement these. Like in India, they are doing such a good job in making role models. They are creating a lot of movies, Bollywood movies, on their sports celebrities, biographies of the high achievers in their country. So, what do you think? What government of Pakistan needs to do to encourage these kind of initiatives that you suggested? First of all, there needs to be a vision, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think you start with the business, right? You start with a vision and a purpose, but you also see the value in it. Like, so what's the value for the government of encouraging more
Yeah.
females? Because this is the conversation we're talking about coming into the workplace. So if you start with the value that actually we need this, and it could be economically driven, fine, right? If it comes to this outcome that you and I are talking about, then that's good, right? There could be an economy angle to this because the economy of Pakistan isn't doing so well, as I understand. You might challenge me, that's okay. But as far as I can see from someone sitting here, it's not, well, no country's really doing well, are they? But Pakistan's not doing very well. So actually, one way out of that is okay, right? How do we get more people into the workplace, right? Surely, more people into the workplace, more taxes get paid, better for the economy,
Yes.
better healthcare system, better education system. It's all a trickle effect, right? So let's agree to the relative value that bringing more diverse talent into industry altogether happens. And then, I don't want to get into kind of political conversations because I'm not smart enough for it. But for me, it's very simple. It's actually how do we encourage more females to get into the workplace? Ask them. Ask them. Don't try and guess. Maybe you can tell me how many men are in politics, in political positions in Pakistan versus women. I don't know the answer to that, but if I assume the majority are males in political seats and political positions, then actually they've got a duty or responsibility to ask the females and ask them what is it going to encourage them. And when I've asked this question before, when I was in a previous organisation, it was flexible hours. It was allowing them to pick. And by the way, this applied to men as well, right? But if I talk about females in general, flexibility in terms of working days. Some people wanted a Friday off, as an example. That's okay. Flexibility to allow to pick their kids up from school. Remote working
Yeah.
opportunities, which is
Yeah.
now a lot more common than it used to be. And so they could actually work. And equality when it came to how men and women are treated. So just because you're a female and you do 3 days a week and you finish at 3 o'clock because you need to pick up your kids, doesn't mean you shouldn't be given the same progression on opportunity as a male who's working 5 days
Yeah.
a week.
Makes
And
sense. Yeah.
do you see what I mean? If you're in the same role. So I think the government has a place to encourage business owners, and I know you're a big champion on this, but business owners like yourself in this space to actually see the value, educate people on the value, and actually proactively try and encourage more females into the space. I'll give you one example, if I may. So when I write a job description, because I'm male, it's biased
Yeah.
towards male, right?
It's naturally
Not because
biased.
I'm a bad
Yeah.
person, but my
Yeah.
unconscious bias kicks in, and I write it towards bias towards men. But I always, since I discovered that, I always get a few people to review the job description. So any natural, I mean, AI and stuff can maybe do that to an extent, but even AI is biased, right? But that's another podcast. But like but you need people to challenge you on the bias of your job description
Correct.
writing to encourage more females to come into the space, right? So what is such a big question. Government mandate education. I don't know if it is, but mandate education for all up to a certain age, regardless of where you are, and provide the facilities to enable you to do that. So everyone's at a base level of education, whatever that may be, and encourage entrepreneurs and business owners to do it. Maybe encourage more
Yeah.
female entrepreneurship. in Pakistan. I think that will be a big thing, right? And put investment behind it as well. I think that could be really good. What do you think? I'm not smart enough to know politics. Tell me what you think because you're on the
In my
ground.
view, in Pakistan, women are used as a tool of marketing. Talking of politics, talking of even in corporate sector. Whenever you will see a sales job or a front desk job, you will see a woman taking care of that. Just exploiting the role of women in that way. But when it comes to core roles, leadership roles, I've seen too much lacking. In government, in politics, yes, this is a bit of a fashion nowadays. I don't want to politicize this podcast, but yes, that's my opinion. That yeah, we've seen women getting into politics, a lot of women, and a lot of the major political parties are getting much women involved for the sake of you know a marketing stunt or getting more traction and getting more votes. That's what I believe. Yeah, let me say it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really good point, right? Because actually, if you look at companies that publish their diversity statistics and stuff like that, you kind of they do it to celebrate how diverse they are, right? And some absolutely should because they've got phenomenal
Hmm.
diversity statistics and stuff. Um, we've got very good diversity statistics, but I don't shout and scream about them. I talk about them if someone asks me. Of course I do, and I don't hide behind that. But the reason I don't shout and scream in celebration about it is because I think that
Hmm.
makes you complacent. Uh, and actually, what you as a leader need to do is challenge how you can do better. So it's great that we've got more females than
Hmm.
males in the workplace, as an example. But how can we do better? Like, what else do we need to look at? How can we look at different backgrounds? How can we do even better in that space? And how can we, most
Yeah.
importantly, bring more value into the business? I think that's so important. So it's really interesting that you say that because it should definitely
Hmm.
not be a marketing gimmick or stuff. Look at
Yes.
the value. What is the value that they're adding?
Yeah,
As you would do in
and
your
in my
business, right?
experience, my experience with working with women versus men, I've seen women more responsible because they've been brought up this way. They know how to take care of their work. They are very much, their self respect is very important to them. So I've never seen a female team member in my team missing deadlines because other than this they have very smaller social network. Boys have lots of things to do here. They have big social networks, friends, gatherings, outings, trips, sports. But the women of Pakistan, they don't have much to do. I mean, they've been brought up this way. So I think it's going to be very good to bring them to workforce, and they will perform much better than men, because I've seen them performing much better than men in my
Yeah.
organization. Yeah,
It's such
yeah,
such an interesting observation, and I think there's just so many facets, and I think we're covering ground that we have, but there's so many facets to it, right? It's just like how do you start with the education from the beginning, mandate it, how do you get them more involved into sports, how do you bring role models and stuff, and bring mentors around individuals kind
hmm,
of climbing the career ladder, and how do you have individuals like yourself who encourage it and
correct.
empower individuals to be themselves, their authentic self, and do the job that they're there to do, regardless of any bias around it, right? So you hire
Yeah,
someone to do a really good job. It doesn't matter where they're from, what they
yeah,
do, all of that kind of stuff. It shouldn't really
hmm,
matter, right? It should come back to are they doing their
yeah.
job and are they doing their
And
job properly?
another example I want to quote here. Uh, the woman that I was talking about earlier, who was, when she was in 10th grade, she started working with her father. She has been such a tremendous contributor to Dice Analytics. The growth of Dice Analytics, where Dice Analytics is at the moment. She has been a main contributor. I don't want to take any names, but she was the head of the complete training operations at Dice until she got married, and again she had to give up her job because that's a cultural norm here. She had to move to another city, and she had to
Right.
focus on setting up a new family and making her place in the family. So yeah, I mean, that's such a waste of talent. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I agree. And look, again, respect all kind of cultures and the cultural element to this for sure. Um, but it's like, I mean, in that case, it would have been like, okay, well, absolutely, but can can she do 3 days a week for you? And I'm sure you, knowing you, I'm sure you asked all of these questions as she was leaving. But I think it's such a, like, I think some of my best hires in my career have been people who have gone off on maternity leave here, so had a child and come back to work and wanted to come back on, or even
Hmm.
a parental leave here. So
Yeah,
man's gone off for parental leave and come back to work, and wants less days a week, and wants that kind of flexibility to upbring their kids and
correct.
spend more time with their kids and stuff. So that's been some of my best hires. You get so much value out of those individuals, and I think
Yeah,
yeah, it is really sad actually that that's the, like, the term you used is that she almost had to, because that's the cultural norm about it. Of course, get married and all of that kind of stuff. That's
yeah,
a beautiful thing, right? And everyone should, and if they want to, right, they should absolutely do it. But that shouldn't stop your personal life, right? You've got your own aspirations. At the end of the day,
yeah.
you come here alone and you go alone, right? Maybe I'm taking the conversation into a
That's the
morbid
truth.
direction, but
Yeah.
that's the truth, right? You come here alone, you go alone. So
Yes.
so what do you want
Oh,
to do for
there's a song,
yourself?
खाली हाथ आए थे हम खाली हाथ जाएंगे.
Are you about to sing? Are you about to
I'm not good
sing
at
to me,
singing,
Omar? This is
but yeah,
amazing.
you just made me recall that.
Yeah,
So technology के अंदर
yeah, yeah.
Wasim, what we have seen is that's my experience. I may be wrong, but what I've noticed that when it comes to technology and core technology roles like coding, development, or even in data analytics, um, when it comes to women, there is no average performer. Either it'll be a poor performer or it'll be an extraordinary performer. That's what I've experienced in my past 17 years of career in Pakistan. It may be wrong in UK or other parts of the world, but I'm not sure why women cannot code. What is your experience on this?
Um, so well, I mean, I can share kind of obviously my experience of here in the UK. I've well, I'll talk about my current business, right? So we've got um, pretty much a 50-50 split. I think it's 52 to 48, so 52% females to 48 men. It fluctuates as we hire and so on, but I think that's the latest. Um, that everyone gets taught to code in our academy, and they're all. I haven't seen I haven't seen any data, and I'm a data person, obviously, right? I've
Hmm.
seen no data to back that females can't code or anything like that, or are weaker perhaps than the men. In fact, in a number of cases they are. I think it depends on
Hmm.
the individual for sure. Like, you get people. If you think about the data industry, right, you'll fall into one of three categories broadly, right? You'll either be the person who wants to sit in a dark room and code and really obsessed with data pipelines and all of that, and in cloud infrastructure, and
Yeah.
you get really excited about that kind of stuff. You're either the person who wants to face the business and do visualizations and insights and stuff like that, or you're either the person that wants to build models and ML models, AI models, all of that kind of stuff, right? And actually, if I look at the proportion of people that are in those categories, it's pretty much even here, like in
Mm.
terms of my experience of working in data in my organization. But it's just the individuals. You get some individuals who you look at, you're like, you're not going to code, you never will, accept it, but
Hmm.
this is what you're really strong at. So maybe it's a case of recognizing where people's strengths are. Like, if you can't code, it's not the end of the world, right? There's other elements to the role for sure. Um, I guess if I was to flip the question back to you, because that's a really interesting observation, do you think it's because the boys are taught more about coding in their education upbringing compared to females? Is that kind of what? Because actually, the human brain is the human brain, right? I don't think it wires between male and female in coding and not coding at all. So how what, do
I
you
mean,
think there's a
they're taught
difference
the
in how they
same
kind of
way. I
educate
mean,
it?
when you go to university, you sit in the same classrooms. Uh, but when it comes to working on logical skills, um, maybe it's a bit harder. Which women in Pakistan, they're not naturally tuned to get into these, hard roles, which is, so logical and so mathematical. So maybe that could be the reason. Yes, there are so many women in statistics side, mathematics side, but when it comes to coding, there is, there's this thing. Whoever you speak with in Pakistan, anyone who is into the software industry or running a software development house, they will say the same thing. What I'm saying to you, and I've experienced this. Yeah.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting. I think
Mm.
that's an opportunity for sure, right? Because I know you'll be a firm believer in this as well, but firmly believe that actually that if we're talking about men and
Yeah.
women can be just as good as coding, if not better than men, and vice versa in lots of cases. But actually, surely there's an opportunity there around how do you set the ground roots up
Yeah.
better if that's a common
Yeah.
theme for women to get into
Yeah.
coding? Like, I don't know, a
But
woman in coding group. There you go. You can have
yeah,
that
but
one.
there's a flip side,
You can
Wasim.
set that one
There's a
up
flip
over.
side. I mean, I've also seen women who are extraordinary coders. They're better than men. My lead coder, who's led
Yeah.
the coding development of Dicecamp.com, who has led the coding, the coding teams uh, of the big projects that I've won awards for in Pakistan. It's her, and yeah, and she's an
It's amazing. It's
amazing
amazing.
coder, and very logical, very focused. But yeah, you can't find that kind of talent everywhere easily.
I think there's so if that is the case for yourself and your business, it will be
Yeah.
great to talk to that individual and get that individual to mentor
Yes.
others and role model for others, because that's such a
Correct.
great use case for you
Correct.
to look at for sure. So I think that could be a good one
Yeah.
to kind of champion,
Correct.
and for her to champion that as well. Yeah, that's interesting because again, it's the cultural bit, right? So it's a kind of a the parents or the husbands allowing the females to do it, whereas actually over here, that's
Yeah.
just like, well, if you do want to do it, you absolutely should do it, right? Like, and I think that's just that's probably kind of all about kind of women empowerment a little bit more, which I know is a topic that we're talking about. That actually, from my perspective, I'm no one to give my wife permission to do anything. It's probably the other way around more than anything else. But actually, if she wants to work, she absolutely should, and she doesn't need my blessing or approval. But that's
Yes.
probably a cultural difference for sure between the two. But if remote working helps that, absolutely. But again, I think it's definitely back to what could business owners, entrepreneurs, or even the government do. Ask them. Right? Is it one day a week in the office? Is it no days a week in the office? It's 2 days in the week. It doesn't matter, right? So, but ask them because that's the best way to do it. And it sounds like with your lead coder, you've nailed it because you've clearly identified her
Yeah.
requirements and
Yeah.
she's
Correct.
performing well for you at
Correct.
the same time.
So Wasim, that's my last question, by the way. What is your what is your vision for
Amazing.
the future regarding women's participation in Pakistani workforce, and what key changes do you believe are necessary to achieve this vision?
Yeah, look, I'd love to play a big part in it, as we've spoken about before as well. So I'd love to start with education for sure. How do we get more girls into education? It's a big passion project of mine, and I'd love to get it up and running with support from individuals like yourself and stuff. So how do we get more females into education? How do we get more females into the workplace? I think that will fundamentally change
Yeah.
everything in the economy when it comes to Pakistan and how Pakistan is performing and stuff as well. I was reading a ranking. Forgive me, I've forgotten what the ranking was. I think it was the primary literacy
Sorry.
index. Forgive me, I might get that wrong, but Pakistan was 135 out of
Hmm.
146 countries for the
Oh,
primary education of
yeah.
females. That's a very low number. So it's like, well, how do we change the dial on that? Because I think that will fundamentally affect everything. Maybe not in our lifetime, but kind of like next generation and a generation after. If we can set the foundations of getting in the right direction, I think that could be good. So that's one thing. Second thing is work with really smart people like yourself and entrepreneurs like yourself to encourage and educate on the value of bringing more diverse talent into the business. And sports, I mentioned it. I think that's a bit left field, but we absolutely should encourage more sports to be played, but more females coming into sports in the first place as well. Like I think if you see, there must be a correlation, and maybe your listeners can come up with one and send it to me. But there must be a correlation between those organisations that invest heavily into sports and females into sports, and those countries doing well at the same time economically. So that would be the three things that I want to see happen.
Perfect. You summarized it very well, Waseem. Thank you very much. It was lovely talking on such an intense topic, and your insights have been remarkable. I mean, I really appreciate that, and your vision is very inspiring. Thank you for coming to
Thank
the
you
show,
so much for
Waseem.
having me, Omar. Thank you for running this as well, and I hope you get continued success in your business, and I'm sure we'll talk again.
Sure, definitely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much once again. Speak to you soon. Yeah.
See you
Take
later.
care. Take care. Bye bye.